And he pulled me over in the corner and he said, well, Neal, I think you ought to know the truth. We're just so sick of telling our wives that we were beat out by a teenager. And we're so glad you're 20 years old. So anyway, yeah, I did that. I did a lot of stuff. The reason I did all that stuff was because I couldn't get into comics. I couldn't get into comics. Not only couldn't get into comics, I couldn't get through the door. I went up to DC Comics and there was this guy named Bill Perry. He came out to the front of the lobby and I had my portfolio there. It was a pretty good portfolio. If I met a guy with a portfolio like that, I wouldn't break his butt, which I do to most young artists now. Because it was a good portfolio, and he said, the guy's name was Bill Perry, and he said, kid, I can't bring you in. I said, I just want to show my stuff to the editors. He said, no. I said, look, kid, there's not going to be a comic book business in a year. You're wasting your time. You're out of your mind. Get a job doing something else. It's the best advice I can give you. Save your own life. You know, just go away. And he was a really nice guy, and he felt sorry for me. You could see his eyes, you know, it was sad that he was turning someone away. He had turned people away for 5 years. He didn't let anybody get in. So I went to Archie Comics, because I knew Jack Kirby and Joe Simon were over at Archie Comics, and they said, and I went to Archie and said, can I draw? I want to draw for Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, The Fly and Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all these weird comic books. And they said, well, leave your samples and we'll do blah, blah, blah. And I left my samples for 3 weeks. Finally, when I came in with this pitiful look on my face, they got me on the phone with Joe Simon, who was Jack Kirby's partner at the time. And he got on the phone and he said, Neal? I said, yes, sir. He said, look, kid, I got to tell you something. You know, there's not going to be a comic book business in a year. You're really wasting your time. And I know this is going to sound really strange, but I'm going to do you the biggest favor in the world. I'm going to turn you down. You have to go out and get other work because this business won't be here anymore. Thank you, Mr. Simon, I said, and hung up the phone. I must have looked so terrible that the Archie guys looked at me and said, maybe you want to draw Archie pages. I'll draw anything, sir. And so that's how I started by drawing Archie pages. If anybody wants to know why Neal drew Archie pages, it's because they took pity on me and they let me draw Archie. Then later on, when I got back into comics, I'll tell you an odd story. I got back into comics, and you know something about me. You know that I'm the guy in the white hat and the white horse, and I, you know, fought for the return of original art, and I fought for royalties and artist rights and all the rest of that. So you have a pretty good idea about that stuff. So anyway, Joe Simon, Jack's ex-partner, came to DC Comics, and I'm up there that day, and he comes around, and Joe Simon's like 6, big guy. And he comes around, he says, he talks to Joe Orlando, he says, I'd like to talk to this Neal Adams guy. And so Joe brings him over.
Big, young, new mover and shaker in the industry at this point, Neal Adams.
This guy who was like a revolutionary and he's getting all the artwork returned, he wants to talk to me. So Joe brings him down the hall, and here comes Joe Simon sailing down the hall, all 6'5" of them, or whatever it is. And he wants to meet me. He says, hello, I hear you've been doing some great things. Look, I need some help. Can you help me out? I said, let's go to the coffee room. We go to the coffee room. And he asked me questions about the industry. He says, look, I'm trying to get some rights back, and I don't know what to do. And can I get your advice? I said, sure. So then I started to give him advice. Here's Neal Adams, you know, at 26, giving Joe Simon advice on, here's a lawyer I can give you who doesn't charge any money, here's a rights counselor I can give you, then you should do this, and then you should do that, you should write bills for all the money people think they owe you, because accountants can't get rid of bills, they stick to their hands like glue, they're afraid to throw them away, so you're going to get what's called a paper trail, okay? And they had this long conversation, Conversation is done. He's very, very happy. Now he can go and fight for his rights. Okay? And I said, if you want to help me, if you need my help, I'll do anything you want. So I'm realizing that at the end of the conversation, Joe Simon is totally unaware that 7 years ago, 8 years ago, he talked to me on the phone.
He said there's no future in this industry.
So suddenly the industry is starting to blossom, and he's coming to me for advice, and he says thanks, he shakes my hand, and we start on our way out, and I said, put my hand on his arm, and I said, Mr. Simon. He turns and he says, yeah. I said, I think I have a story to tell you. Since then, as you know, the comic book business has gotten to be quite incredible. You can see what's happened to it. At DC, at Marvel, at the Independents. Of course, sales are going down, and we're going on the internet, and we're doing all kinds of incredible things. And my son, Josh, has entered a different field. Nobody's telling Josh that we're going to be out of business in a year. In fact, people are being very nice to Josh, and Josh is doing things like Doctor Who. Josh is doing things like he's waiting for a contract for an internet comic with
Blind Ferret Entertainment. They do The Gutters, and they do Least I Could Do, Looking for Glue. A few people know them.
Josh is doing comps and storyboards on a commercial basis for the Sci-Fi Channel.
We did a panel similar to this in Ottawa, and every time he would mention something and want me to fill it in, I wouldn't be able to, so he's sort of just filling it in for me because I blank out.
And we shot a documentary, a TV show documentary that's not really a documentary, it's
like a reality show, sort
kind of a reality show.
exploring the entertainment world, comics, movies, video games.
Did a lot of interviews at the Joe Kuber School and a bunch of other places. And Josh became, by the nature of his obviously aggressive and nasty personality, the host of the show. So this is Josh's young career. Now, I'm not saying that this show is going to go on the air because, you know, you do a show and you set the thing up and you start to take it around, but I saw it and it's terrific. And everybody's cooperative, and you learn a lot about our business from the ground up. You learn a lot about how tough it is to do portfolio reviews, how the Joe Kuber School is, how Marvel is, how DC is. Everybody's opening up to us, and I think it's going to be a great show. And if it doesn't make it, you know, you can kind of point to it and say, hey, well, it didn't happen. But usually, stuff like this happens, and I think this one's going to happen. So, that's what's going on. That's what's going on with him in a business that's going to close next year.
Yeah.
By the way, about 25 years after you told Joe Simon that story, and he was entertained by it, I told the story to him again. He had totally forgotten about it again. And it was all fresh to him, and he broke up laughing. He thought it was one of the greatest stories he ever heard. He says, I don't remember any of that, but it's one of the greatest stories I ever heard.
So,